Welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ@ArtistFirst.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I'm Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And we are back.
Yep.
Did you miss us? We were away at an undisclosed location, which we are not at liberty to share with you. And during our absence, there was some of the best of us.
The best of us.
The best of us.
Oh, dear.
Which we have a lot of, which we could probably take off the next 4 years if we needed to. So don't tempt us. We would never do that, would we?
Life is interesting.
Life is interesting. So, but tonight we're back, as I mentioned, and we're going to start off April with suffering. Because, it's been going too well so far.
It's just time.
The year has just been swimmingly going along, and so it's time for suffering. No, Spring is here, and for allergy sufferers everywhere,
yes,
there's some suffering going on. But we're going to talk about our buddy Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich? Something like that. Friedrich Nietzsche. So if you aren't already damn depressed,
hang on to your hat.
Hang on to your hats, because Nietzsche's here. And Nietzsche is, he's no fun at parties at all. And his mom really didn't even like him. And he had a horrible mustache and stuff. But to this day, he's remembered as one of the great philosophical minds of, I guess, the 19th century or something like that. When did he live? He's dead now, thank God. And we are going to talk about Nietzsche, and I think this is a pithy quote. So why don't we just lead off with the quote? Do you have the quote in front of you?
Yes.
Because we'll try to establish context now that I've just derailed us.
Okay.
For the first 5 minutes.
All righty.
So go.
All right. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Nietzsche.
Friedrich Nietzsche. So this is very German.
This is very cheerful, yes.
And cheerful. As the Germans are so cheery, as everyone knows. But, Margaret,
yes,
it has a kernel of truth. Of course, it echoes Gautama Buddha's wonderful revelation that all life is suffering.
Life is suffering.
It's almost a paraphrase. So we might say that Nietzsche might have read a little bit of Buddha's writings, but in his own way, in turning it around, all life is suffering is revelatory, and it encapsulates a beautiful, pithy thought that when Buddha realized this, that all life is suffering, what he was really saying, though, is that, through that revelation, he was able to reach an enlightenment. He was able to break through and realize that even though all life is suffering, that's not what life is about. And Nietzsche is sort of paraphrasing, but in his own way, in turning it around a little bit, to say to live is to suffer is almost the same thing. But to survive, and people say, well, okay, if I'm going to suffer, and life is going to be, this horrible progression of events that's going to occur throughout the rest of my life, why should I even bother to, there's a certain nihilist, and Nietzsche's among those who were, the nihilists are, the old God is dead. Nietzsche was pretty much a nihilist in some regards, but nihilism would say, well, why bother, right? Why bother living? But to survive, and what Nietzsche means by this is to really persevere, to continue in spite of, is to find some meaning in the suffering. And really, I think in the German might be more along the lines of, well, just more along the lines of that survival in and of itself requires that you find some meaning in the suffering, that you realize that there is it is not mindless. It is not even random. It's not that your suffering is just a condition which has no purpose whatsoever, merely something to be endured, and have get no benefit, no actually. There's no redeeming quality to suffering at all. That's the nihilist way. It's just there, and if you wish, you can just abandon your life, and reject suffering through, in essence, self-destruction, let's say. But no, Nietzsche finds this little grain of hope, which is probably unlike him, and he probably distrusted the revelation that to survive, which means to persevere, and to realize that this is not in and of itself the truth of life. Life is not suffering, although Buddha said all life is suffering. Life is not suffering. Life is surviving suffering, and life is acquiring through suffering, through surviving suffering, some meaning. So this also dovetails, Margaret, with his wonderful, probably more famous revelation that whatever doesn't destroy you makes you stronger.
Right.
Nietzsche's, I'm probably paraphrasing that a little bit, but in essence, the idea that surviving suffering provides a benefit. You learn something new about yourself, or something perhaps that you might have felt, well, I'm strong, or I'm brave, or I'm courageous, or I have these abilities to overcome and persevere, but you haven't been tested. You haven't been put in the situation. It's akin to people who read all kinds of books, let's say about, for argument's sake, childbirth, and you know everything about it. You've taken all the Lamaze, you've done all the breathing and the whatever they do in those trainings, and you've got it all down. Exactly. But then, like the soldier on the battlefield, when the first shot is fired, or like when the first pangs of labor actually start to occur, then now it's no longer theoretical. Now you are actually in the fire, and you've got to actually not apply what you've learned, but realize that what you were able to learn about this in no way encapsulated the actual experience. It's just a mere echo of what it's somebody's description. It's like trying to describe a sunset or a sunrise, and then experiencing it. The wonder of it, the beauty of it, cannot be properly encapsulated in words, and nor can the experience of anybody's experience, whatever it is, even if it's in excruciating detail, which some people try to write. As a writer, some people try to write things in excruciating detail. It's incredibly boring. But even if you have excruciating detail about how this person's experience went, it will in no way actually mimic or describe your experience. So your experience is your own, it's unique, and to survive it is to find something within yourself to come up to that unique experience which is yours, not anyone else's.
Well, to have the experience is always different than the description of it. It's again, we're talking about communications, and many times the words, or the word packets is what I'd like to call them, don't deliver an accurate reconstruction in the other person's mind. You've got to have a reference point, usually, to springboard from, to begin to encompass an experience. And perhaps it is the translation from German into English that is weaker, because what you were saying is that survival in his context, in Nietzsche's context, is actually living, which kind of makes you wonder, well, if you're not living, does that mean you're dead? In this definition, you know.
I think that I like that. I mean, what I think is, if you give up in the face of suffering, whether it's nihilism or running, okay. We've often said, when you're walking through hell, keep walking. But there is the other option. When you're walking through hell, that you try to avoid it, that you try to shun it, that you try to deny its existence, and that doesn't get you anywhere either. You know, the part of surviving a difficult experience is to accept it, that it is what is happening, and to push it off onto another, or to push it off onto someone else will make this better for me, to run away from it, to hide from it, to succumb to it without fighting, in essence, is not acceptance. That's denial, and that gets you nowhere. It's actually a denial of reality. And I think what Nietzsche's, the word that he's using here is survive, but it really is to accept that this is where you are right now. It doesn't mean you have to stay there. It doesn't mean you have to set up camp there. But you can't deny the reality of the situation either if you're going to survive it. Survival means that you fight against it. You overcome it in some ways. You endure it.
I don't know if you're fighting against it, but it's...
it's not fighting, but persevering.
No, yes, persevering, enduring, because in that first line of his, to live is to suffer. So it's an assumption that life experience is always going to cause a problem in some way, a conflict or an expansion, maybe is the best way to put it, because the definition that we've always used here for pain is that you've met your limit and then you've pushed past it. And whenever you push past your own limit, it's painful. And you have to learn to endure it. So in that sense, it's surviving the experience. And enduring the experience maybe is a slightly different definition in Nietzsche's realm than in the everyday realm. Because a lot of people go through life believing that they're not supposed to be having any problems whatsoever. You know, why isn't my life comfortable? You are the reason why I'm uncomfortable.
Right, blame someone else, yeah.
And not realizing that what Nietzsche's talking about is you have decided that your suffering, the suffering that you're experiencing, is your own experience or your own perception, and to take a step out of it, to allow yourself to move through it, to survive it, is the what was the phrase he used? To survive is what?
To find some meaning.
To find some meaning is you expanding the boundaries of what you think this suffering is, and to find a way to relate to it. Because we all relate to things, and you actually can choose the way you relate to something or an experience. So if you decide to relate to an experience that has caused pain and then decide, well, it's somebody else's fault because my life is not supposed to be uncomfortable, you've bypassed the great strength that he's trying to point out to you. That survival is your own choice, your way to go through an experience, instead of sitting there and trying to avoid the discomfort or the loss because the more you push away that loss or that pain, the greater the pain that you're causing to yourself. The only way to go is through. And yes, it is uncomfortable. Yes, it can be painful. But there's an end to it, believe it or not. And that therein lies your own strength. You can live throughout all the madness that you experience in this life. You are more than capable of living. But you must let go of this concept of it's got to be my way, because I know the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, and exactly that. You go back to what you said earlier. The meaning that you're deriving from this is, in some ways, learning that it isn't what you imagine it should be, nor is it under your own control, as far as circumstances is concerned. But I wanted to go back even further, because I think this was, the point that people often gloss over, and you mentioned it very strongly, but I want to reemphasize.
Okay.
Is that there's no growth without pain,
right,
of one form or another. When you are born, you could say, well, I want to remain an infant, because it's almost paradisical. Everyone does everything for me. Anything I do, including pooping my pants, is somehow praiseworthy. Everyone thinks I'm the most wonderful thing ever. I get fed, I get pampered, I get washed, but yet there's a circumstance which occurs to all of us, which is that you must grow. You cannot stay as an infant. If you resist that, just let's say that for whatever reason that you resist growing up, you want to remain, regardless of all circumstance, regardless of the fact that you grow bigger and that your body matures, that people who are taking care of you no longer can do so for whatever reason, but yet you say, I'm going to remain a helpless infant that must be cared for throughout my whole life, because this is paradisical. This is where I want to remain. I'm not going to grow up. Well, everyone says that's ridiculous. You can't stop yourself from growing up. No, but if you resist it, you cause both to yourself and to everyone around you tremendous suffering. Yet, if you really, really try to deny that reality, you can, for a period of time, perhaps retard your own growth. But you don't spare yourself any suffering at the end of the day. You incur even greater suffering, and you don't get any of the meaning from your life. Your avoidance, your denial of reality gains you nothing. And the consequence of the denial of reality is nothing more than a retardation of your growth. The acceptance that you have to grow, that what you lose every people say, well, I don't want to ever lose anything. Every moment of your life is a balance between loss and gain. You lose the you that goes into the past is gone. It's always gone. It's gone forever. It is an immutable thing which has happened, everything that happened to you, is unchangeable. So the past you existed in the moment of now, and exists in the sense that the past happened. The universe, everything that's causal about it, all things that are in the past happened, but they're immutable. They can't be changed anymore. However, they have some effect on what may happen to you now and some effect with what may happen to you in the future. However, that's a loss. You lose your past self. There's the moment of now in which everything happens all the time. That is the only thing that is actually being, actually happening, is this moment of now. And within that moment of now, there is a component of you which changes. It grows. There's a component of you which experiences the moment as potentially suffering, or as potentially at least change. No matter what, people look at change, Margaret, and they look at it and they go, oh, I don't want change. I never want change. Well, no, because change has two components in it which people kind of have a problem with. Something might get worse, and the worst part about it is we don't know what's going to happen. So there's this uncertainty about the future. Gosh, anything could happen. No matter what I want, anything could happen. So that's something you don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about, because almost all of our, if you live in an egoic universe, almost all of your time is spent on thinking about what's going to happen to me next. Terrible, but people do. And if that doesn't frighten you enough, then the moment of now comes, and that may frighten you, because all of a sudden there may be some circumstance which you have no control over, which then causes suffering because you think I should have control over it, so this is suffering. You reject it, or you try to deny it. This causes suffering. And if you reject it and deny it and try to have control over it, you're going to find no meaning in it. It's going to just appear to be this imposition of horribleness that I can't do anything about, and I hate, and I want anything else to be but in the moment of now. Well, this is the definition of suffering.
Yes. Well,
but it's not Nietzsche's definition of survival. Sorry, go right ahead, Emma.
No, just that a lot of people mentally have this one question in their lives that continually in their head. And they go about saying, gee, my life is awful. And then they proceed to continually, throughout the day, prove to themselves that their life is awful.
Yes. In spite of all circumstance, they will snatch awfulness from any circumstance whatsoever.
Yes.
Because they'll think, even if it's not awful right now, it's going to be awful.
Right. And it's fascinating when that happens, because their baseline is proving, no, my life is awful. Look, see how awful it is? This happened to me, and then this happened, and this happened. And of course that's going to happen to me. And you kind of sit there and you go, okay, so you're just counting all the things that you believe prove that you have an awful life. But objectively, can you look at it without making that assumption that your life is awful? Can you just start with, my life is?
Mm-hmm.
And then begin to experience what is happening, not the prejudgment of, I know this is going to be awful. Because it's a balance throughout your day. It's like, hey, I hit that light in the intersection and it was green. I didn't have to stop. I think that's cool. Or, I managed to miss the deer that was thinking about trying to cross the road in front of me. Yay, I missed him.
Well, yeah, and these are little things, But that's the point.
Well, this is what I mean by my life. My life is good because I'm still here. I mean, most of us take for granted the fact that you happen to be here. And if you thought about it, just for 5 minutes, what circumstances allowed you to be here? Were there incidences in your life where you wound up, you thank God that didn't happen. I could have died. Oh, wow. I could have died in that moment. But you're here. I mean, that's a more dramatic thing. Or things fall in place and suddenly, I can be here and meet with you and talk with you or meet a friend or make a new friend. I mean, life is very interesting because it's that initial seed you send out, the vibe that you put out when you enter the time stream of your life. What are you perceiving? Now, I don't mean that you have to be a Pollyanna where everything is always good, always there's all. It's just observing what is and not making a judgment call. It's very difficult not to make that judgment call because that's what we've been trained to do from the very beginning.
If you run back to Nietzsche's statement that the first part of it, to live is to suffer, and even though this is, again, echoing Buddha's sentiment, a lot of people take that and make it their mantra.
Yes.
And in essence,
I'm going to suffer today.
Well, yes, and as you just said, and I'll just say too, that the bias of the moment of now is to judge it to be imperfect, and in fact to say that anything that's happening right now can't be accepted for either good or bad. It has to be judged. In fact, the good or bad acceptance is even not. It can't be accepted as this is the moment of now, whatever it is, and observed and potentially. So you may be able to act, you may not be able to act, but you just are there. No, you live in suffering, regardless of the moment of now. You call it from the past, so you bring whatever happened to you yesterday or last week or 10 years ago or 50 years ago, and bring that to the moment, to the present moment in memory, and suffer. Or you sit there and say, well, everything seems to be fine, but I know,
the other shoe is going to drop.
Right, that something horrible is going to happen in everyone, and so you live not in the acceptance of the moment of now. So you live in the suffering. Now, Nietzsche says to survive, but that's the breakthrough. If you say to yourself that I'm not going to just imagine that suffering is going to be here. I'm not going to bring suffering up from the past. I'm not going to judge every moment. I'm going to say I'm going to survive this moment. Now you say, well, gosh, I'm not clinging to a mountainside as an avalanche falls and as a pit of sharks or the ocean full of sharks below me. No, you're not a James Bond hero or something. But the survival part of every part of your day is to realize that in this moment of now, it is. And whatever is happening in that moment of now doesn't need to be judged. You don't need to think, well, this is going to cause all kinds of horrible pain, and I'm going to just, this is, no matter what is happening around me, it's always going to be bad, or everything that happened to me in the past means that my life is a failure for the rest of time. No. Surviving the moment of now is accepting it and finding some meaning in it. And the meaning of this moment isn't that you should reject it if suffering is coming in or if there's something bad going to happen, nor is it that you should only accept what you judge to be good or what you want to be versus what is. It's learning that in this particular moment, I don't have any control over what it is that's going to happen to me. I have control over one thing, how I feel about it, how I accept it. And sometimes that requires you to do this horrible thing, which is to grow. To learn that the moment of now has to be survived, and it's not. See, survive has in connotations, at least in English, of battling, of being some sort of hero or some sort of villain or some you're doing some action. Survival seems to be an action-oriented thing, but it isn't. In the context of what I believe Nietzsche is trying to say here is that you have to live in the moment of now. So to live is to suffer, yes, but to live through the moment of now is to survive it, to go on, to pass through, to live in the moment and through the moment of now to the next one, and in doing so, grow a little bit. And growth here means find some meaning in it. In this moment of now, a circumstance is happening, whatever it may be. It can be something earth-shattering or existential, or it can be something just like, hey, somebody bought us all lunch. Well, whatever the moment of now is, it has to be accepted. This is more Tolle than Nietzsche, perhaps, but it has to be accepted. It has to be survived, which means you have to live through it. You have to find some meaning in it. So you have to say, well, in this moment of now that I'm going to live through, how do I feel about it? How does it expand that which is me? I gather it as experience. This expands me. This teaches me. This helps me grow. This gives me perspective. This gives me some insight, perhaps, into the mystery which is me. Everyone wants to know more about me. Well, how am I going to find out about me? Well, you have to find out about you through relationships, through experiences. So, in the moment of now, every moment of now has an experience. Every moment of now has another thing. It has you in it.
Okay.
And you and the experience together have to grow.
Right. Well, I think the definition of survive is very interesting.
Oh, okay, go.
It means to remain alive or in existence, to carry on despite hardships or trauma, persevere, or to remain functional or usable. So in other words, to continue regardless of the suffering that you are going through, whatever the suffering is, can you carry on despite the hardship or the trauma? Can you persevere?
Can you grow?
And the baseline is, are you functional and stable?
Right. Stable.
Stable.
Well, I mean, we're laughing about it, but in truth, that may refer more to objects in the definition, but to be functional and stable can apply to people as well. And the way it applies to people is circumstance. If you take it as suffering and judge it, it can make you unfunctional. It can literally turn you into sort of it can make you withdraw from the moment of now. It can make you in love or enamored with your fantasy about the moment of now that you're no longer functional. You probably, I know this, you've never done this yourself, of course, but you probably have observed people whose fantasies substitute for reality. This never happens to you, of course, but for others, when you look upon them and you say they're not dealing with reality, they're dealing with some sort of fantasy. Their appreciation of what's actually happening has no relationship to what is actually happening. It's some sort of story that they're telling themselves. And when you see people doing that, you realize that they're no longer functional, because what they're doing isn't actually, let's say, helping the situation. It's not actually helping them survive the actual circumstance that they're in, but they're fighting some sort of imaginary situation.
Right.
Oh, this one's always out to get me, and this one, I've always hated this one, and this one's, this person is out to, putting all these obstacles in front of me and has never liked me, and I know what I'm going to do, and then this one's going to do that, and they're all the way down into this minutia of this novel that they're writing in their head, and they're no longer functional because the actual circumstance, what's really happening, is totally ignored in favor of this. And so you'll say, well, this one's a basket case. This one can't deal with the reality of what's actually going on. And, having had both of us, and when we were in Sloan Kettering, direct experience with people who were in abject denial of the reality of the situation, now you can feel sorry for them. You can certainly say that in this moment, this is just too much for them, perhaps. But to stay there is not surviving the moment. It's not able to be functional. Margaret's definition of survival is that you can still be useful, that you're still actually in touch with your basic function, which is to live and to experience in the world and to deal with the circumstances, whatever they may be. No. If you're overwhelmed and running off into some fantasy land, you're no longer dealing with the reality, and someone has to deal with the reality no matter what. If you have a child which is going through an existential crisis, a crisis of which could take their life, and you run off into some fantasy about how you're going to find the person who's responsible for this and make them somehow make it all right, that doesn't deal with the reality, Well,
what's in front of you?
What's really in front of you, where you really need to be, is perhaps dealing with the pain and the suffering and the moment of now, which requires a tremendous amount of growth from you. You have to no longer be the sort of self-focused, perhaps ego-centered person that you were before. You have to break down those barriers, which are very comfortable, and say, I don't know what to do, but I know I can do something. Show me, allow grace to come through. No, that's hard.
It's just that when the response, when a parent sees that their child is suffering, and especially a father, they want to protect their child. Not saying a mother doesn't want to, but she does. If your response is based on how you happen to be feeling in this moment, you feel inadequate. You feel like, I wasn't able to protect my kid. Well, I can do something about that. I can, believing that the protection means going to find out what caused the cancer, and then I'm going to go after that. Instead of realizing that your child is the one that is truly suffering and is requiring something different from you. He's not expecting you to trace it back and find out what caused it, and then, what good does that actually do in this moment where he's looking at you with those big eyes? But you're doing that to make yourself feel better. You're not doing that to make your child feel better. What he's asking of you, or what she is asking of you, is just be with me. You don't have to do anything heroic or dramatic. I just need you to hold my hand as they inject this stuff in my system. And that is almost too much for some of the parents that we had interacted with, because they're just like, no, I can't deal with this everyday thing. I can't deal with the fact that he's going to have to suffer again through this injection. But how can I make myself feel better? Well, you know what? It's not about you.
Right.
You're going to have to let go of your immediate feeling of inadequacy and understand that without answering him or her, your child, without answering the request that is being asked of you, just be with me, then you really are inadequate. That's the definition of inadequate, not trying to justify your existence. I'm a bad, look, I'm really a good parent because look what I'm going after. It's like, what is the phrase, closing the barn door after the horse has left? I mean, it's done. What you have to do now is go chase after the horse.
Well, I think exactly what you said is that, and I want to just go back and reiterate, you said that what they're doing, what the temptation to do is to make yourself feel better.
Right.
By staying comfortable, by staying with, you don't want to, the challenge is given in that particular circumstance, the challenge is given to go beyond what you know. The challenge is, there's an existential event that's happened to you or to your child. And the temptation is, rather than to survive it, which is to go beyond it, to remain functional, to grow,
endure.
to endure, but also to allow the circumstance to be your reality, to realize that everything I knew up to this point, and this is the scariest thing for almost everybody, everything I knew up to this point doesn't apply anymore. I'm in, terra incognita. I'm in the white spaces on the map. I don't know what to do. The next step is into a void, into a blank nothingness. I don't know where my foot's going to fall. So that fear rises up so great and so terrifying that the temptation to run off into the fantasy, to not be functional, to not be what needs to be, which is sometimes just to sit and, as Margaret said, just hold someone's hand and just be there. Be inadequate, be unable to fix something, yet rise to the occasion of having to, in essence, suffer through and survive in the moment and grow. If you run off into your comfortable space of, I'm going to find somebody to pay for this, and I'm going to ask for that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to make sure that all that comfortable stuff is just running into the fantasy. It's no longer being functional. It's no longer even accepting the moment of now. It's running, it's hiding. Now, does the moment of now stop because you don't want to accept it? No. All you do is you remove yourself from the actual experience. And, okay, at that moment, and this is something which we saw very, very personally and up close, at that moment, you know you're doing the wrong thing. Your heart knows. You know that what is required of you is very plain. The actual whisper in the back of your mind from your heart is that this is, and that I can't go off and run into my comfortable zone and avoid it all and somehow pretend that if I put my fingers in my ears and sing a song that nothing will actually happen, that the world will stop. No.
Oh, okay.
The truth, the truth is that you know what you have to do. You're afraid and you run away. And that doesn't help. And it doesn't survive. You just go into the suffering, and even worse, into the suffering. You don't get any meaning from that. You get nothing from that but pain.
Right. Well, it's an illusion that you're building.
An illusion, yes.
You're telling yourself a story that this is what really matters now.
Right.
My child, this is what I can do to be useful. It's like, no, you're running away.
Yeah.
And then the other excuse that usually comes up is, well, what else can I do? I can't manage my kids' chemo, or this is something that I can do. It's like, well, it's still not about you.
Right.
It's still not about you. Why is your comfort overriding the person that is truly suffering? Truly suffering. And you guys are going to have to excuse me. I have a very hard time when parents were doing that, because they wanted to explain to me why they're doing this, and I'm looking at them going, so? He needs you here. Oh, well, somebody else can do that. I love that expression as well. No, he wants you to do this. Can you stop whining and help him? And the interesting part is, many times the child understands that the parent is inadequate, truly inadequate. They can't handle this. So what do? They try to find little things that the parent can do. Oh yeah, could you go downstairs and get me this? Or let's try that. Or finding little errands for their dad or their mom to do so that they feel useful. And in that moment, you look at that and you go, so, who's actually the parent in this picture? And I'm talking about children, guys, like 8 years old. Our guy was 5. These kids understand what's going on, and they shoulder the burden of what the parent is crying about. He or she is feeling bad. They don't want them to feel bad. They love you unconditionally, so they're going to take it on, whether you realize it or not.
Well, and just to abstract it from that experience, if you abstract it a little bit away from that particular one, what's happening there is the person who is truly, as you said, suffering, is also truly living. And this is, if you focus, it's, truly accept that where you are is where your life circumstances is truly what's going on. You survive it. Now, surviving it doesn't mean that you're going to live forever, no. And it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get through this particular circumstance unscathed, or be completely healed, or be unchanged. None of that is true. But once you accept that this is where you are, the revelation of Buddha, which is all life is suffering, but yet the truth of life is not the suffering, comes to that person. And you can see it in these circumstances very clearly, but you can see it in everyday life circumstances as well. So what Margaret just said that these kids would do is they were there, they were living, they were surviving, they were finding meaning in their lives. Yes. In that moment.
Yeah.
They knew that the true life, the living of life was right now, because now was the only thing you had, and now was incredibly precious. Mm-hmm. And to see someone you love dearly, unable to face the moment of now, which is what all that is about, all the fantasy is, I have chosen to dwell on the past. I've chosen to live in the future. I've chosen anything but the moment of now, because you have that power, amazingly enough. Even the most unconscious among us have the power to choose this fantasy. So you have tremendous power. You're using it to feed your own ego rather than to be in the moment of now. But that tremendous power does that. You see it. They see it. They could see that the person who was there, who should have perhaps been the caregiver, was one who needed care. And because you're in such a moment of now where you are truly living, you are truly finding meaning, they took pity upon them. And you just said it. They say, well, this one I can't. They just can't come up to it in so many words. These kids weren't saying, well, to themselves, well, they can't come up to us, but they could feel it. Again, these are all at the heart level. The energy of the other was in overwhelm, in fantasy. They weren't surviving. They weren't functional anymore. They were living in some fantasy. And so in pity and compassion, true compassion, these children became the ones who would guide the ones who should have been the caregivers, guide them towards, well, I can see you're suffering more than I am in some ways. And so here's something that'll make you feel better. Now, Margaret, you were incensed by this because that's just what you could see. You say, look, you're not doing your job. You're accepting, in essence, the role of the one who requires care rather than the one who gives care. And that was, an abrogation of the responsibility that they had in being the parent and supposedly being the one who can be the protector. Well, no, you're not anymore. But you can very clearly see that these children understood, because of where they were, their spirit and their heart were in alignment. They were finding the meaning in the suffering, realizing that life is still life regardless of circumstance, and then seeing the other and saying, well, I can see that I can't force them to face reality, but at least I can, give them something that makes them feel a little bit better. And this wasn't always the case. There are very many parents there who came up to the moment of now that understood at one point or another that this was truly where they were, and that this was precious and not to be not to be avoided. It was something that needed to be. But the kids were there first, almost to a person,
right.
because in true circumstances that are existential, that you are at the bitter point of the spear, the human spirit, the being, rises up. And they didn't have time to waste on nonsense. They understood that.
No, they understood that this is what I have right now. That's it.
Yes.
And there's no future think. And frankly, there was very little past think. They're just like, okay, this is what we're doing now.
It was now think. Yeah.
It was now think. And I guess you can look at it and say, well, karma. They had to resolve an issue. All right. And I know some people believe that you should allow for experiences like that to work themselves out. I suppose survive it in some way. But the unconsciousness of it is what I think irritated me. Because
I think that's what irritated you, for sure.
The unconsciousness of it. And basically asking for justification from everybody else. Because if one person avoids their responsibility of that moment with the child will try to take care of it. But this is still a child. Old soul though it may be, this is still a child. And so they basically wind up relying on all the others in the room for help. And that's what I saw.
And, again, to be compassionate about it.
You're compassionate to the child that's suffering.
Yes, but even, it is very seductive to run away. And it's only when you really can't, when you absolutely can't, because it is you. There's no denying it. There's no avoiding it. You have to burn it. You have to come to the end of yourself. And this is, the longer or the deeper that you've built up your ego walls, the more there is to tear down. Not necessarily the harder it is to tear down, but the more there is. There's inertia there. There's a tremendous habit form there. There's a whole lot of pain body there that these folks had to overcome. And it is a process of both destruction and growth. And because, to the extent that you've avoided it throughout your whole life experience and built up these ego walls and built up these these buffers of unconsciousness, and when they are taken down by circumstance, by unavoidable circumstance, there is a tremendous amount of suffering. This is probably the best way to put it, and this is kind of like karma. No matter what you do, the price will be paid. You can avoid, for as long as you want and build up all the fantasy that you want, but when it comes right down to it, the price will be paid. And if you have to pay it quickly, it hurts all the more. So to realize early on, as Buddha did and perhaps as Nietzsche did, that to live is to suffer, but to accept that, and accept the fact that you have to survive the moment of now and remain conscious, remain functional, remain true to yourself, to grow, and in growing, accept the experience, realize that this is part of your existence right now. It isn't you don't identify with it. It's not your being. It is where your being is, though, in this moment. And grow. Take the experience in. Realize that you're there because you need to be there. It's exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yes, it is exactly where you're supposed to be.
And where we are right now is at the end of the show, which you're just... So I'm sorry to kind of wind this up abruptly, but you're in the moment of now because that's where you're supposed to be. And Nietzsche knew that. And that's the meaning of life, if you will. So let's wrap it up, I suppose.
All right. Well, I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And may you survive your suffering. Have a good one, people.
That's good.